Chaka Khan. Thanks everyone for coming along today. I am Prue Gonzalez, joined by Lachlan Kalache, and today we're going to take you through some new tools. So I think there's been a bit of a proliferation in the last sort of 12, 18, 24 months from educational technology companies, just coming up with new ideas of how we can share content, create content, look at how we can use digital tools in the classroom. So today, Lachlan and I thought we'd go through a couple of some new ones. There's plenty more new ones out there, but we thought today we'd, in particular, look at tools around content curation and how we might use those in the classroom and what they can look like, and how we might use them in our teaching. So we're going to go through some different types of content curation or digital content curation tools. That is a mouthful. So today we're going to look at the tools. Specifically, we'll look at Feedly. We'll look at something called Wakelet, which is quite a new one. And we'll also have a look at Thinglink. So they've all got pretty cool names and they can all do quite different things when it comes to content curation. We can curate different types of content, and then we can also share it differently with our students. So we'll walk through each of those three different tools. We'll have a look at some teaching ideas and, of course, take some Q&A. And some of you might have trialed these already. Let us know in the chat box what you've been using and how you've been sort of creating your content, and why. And I guess the first question would be, well, why would we curate content? What would we be doing with that? But hopefully, as you'll see, content curation is a really nice way of helping to show our students the link between what we might be doing in the classroom and what's happening out there, as we like to say, in the real world, or what's happening out there in the digital world, and how we might link that back into our subject content. Is there anything else you would add there, Lachlan, about content curation, what it is, how it works?
Look, not really, only that it seems to be a persistent theme amongst kind of educational technology app creators at the moment, that everything on the internet has value somehow, and that everything that people are able to get onto the internet from their own personal experiences, etc., has value, and so that they want it to create different types of tools that allow you to bring all of those together and then share them, potentially get other people involved in that same space. So the persistent theme really is engagement, whether it's at an individual level or within a group. And so what we're trying to do, I guess, well, today particularly, I guess, is to highlight some of the more popular ones. These three tools crop up fairly regularly in forums around popular educational tools. I think the only caveat I'd put into that is that you may look at these and sometimes question the audience age. Maybe a lot of the time, the educational technology tools that seem to get a lot of press early on are aimed more at primary students, for example, and then you have to think a little bit harder about how they might work with more mature audiences or in other contexts. That certainly happens to me when I look at things. Usually the first 5 minutes I'm going, oh, this would be good for a 3-year-old, but not so much for me. And then, yeah, spend some time thinking about it. So we'll see how we go. And as Prue said, please comment lots, share your own experiences and your own thoughts on whether or not these are going to have any application for you as we look through them. But we will try in each of the session-based PD blocks. Today's the last one for 2020-30. The last episode as such, we'll always try and canvas new tools. So if you've got ideas or have heard about things that you would like us to explore and look at in the next one, by all means also feed those through to either Prue or myself. There you go, Prue. So for not much, I had a bit much to say. Sorry.
Always welcome your thoughts, Lachlan. Absolutely. I guess we'll start with Feedly, aren't we, today? And we'll have a look at this one. And I think, Lachlan, you can probably describe it better than me. I feel like I fall over myself in trying to explain what Feedly is. But it's based on RSS feeds. It's an aggregator. Is that correct, Lachlan? That we can pull in a whole range of different types of communications from multiple sources into one sort of feed for our students to be able to learn from.
Yeah, so I guess as the title might suggest, it's to do with collecting RSS feeds or feeds of different types of information coming through and storing them in the one spot So you might recall, for those of you that were around last week, for example, we looked at Pocket Cast very briefly at the end, which was a feed aggregator tool, a feed collecting tool that allowed you to get, to subscribe to your various podcasts and see them all in the one place. But its limitation was that it was mobile device only. Feedly is a little bit more broad in terms of what it will allow you to subscribe to. And we'll have a look at what the tool allows you to do, obviously, in a minute. But the questions we always get asked in this space are around the pricing, the free versions. Does the university have license for any of this stuff? None of the tools we're looking at today, the university has a license for. We're looking at the free versions of those tools and what they allow. I'm still, I guess, beavering away at that space to try and get clarification around our process and policy for onboarding new tools and technologies. There is some work happening in that space, and hopefully we won't have to wait too much longer to get clarification around how we get new tools, even in, for test periods here onboarded at the university. So everything that we're looking at really is from an individual point of view as a free account holder. All right, so look, feedly.com is the address that we're looking at. And as I said, it's basically operating under the premise that there's a lot of content happening out there on the web, feeds coming through, and I'd like to collect all of those into the one location. The terminology that we'll be talking about today is the use of feeds. And within each feed, there will be a number of sources, which is each individual RSS address that's coming into that. And the idea that we can also separate our most beloved, important, whatever the case may be, content into a particular collection, which Feedly calls a board. And the limitation really under the pricing for Feedly is that if you want a board that can be made public, you can only do that under a paid account. So you can make your own board and collect your own content within it for your own use, but you cannot share that board unless you have a paid account version of Feedly. So look, what we might do is actually open Feedly up and have a look. I might open the title page as well, just so we can get a look at what that looks like. How'd they go with spelling? Fantastic. There's a mobile app version for Feedly as well that will allow you to not only view content in a Feedly stream, but also to add further content to it wherever you might be. Logging into Feedly, joining it is like a lot of the applications we've been looking at. If you've got a Google account, it's a pass to pretty much all of these tools. Rather than having to create a new account every time, you literally can sign in with your Google account that you might be using for Google Drive, Docs, Sheets, YouTube, any of the tools we've been looking at where we said use a Google account for this because it'll get you straight in. Feedly is exactly the same. And once you do sign in, you've got an interface that allows you, it starts talking on the left-hand side in the nav here about feeds. And I've actually created a number of different feeds here to demonstrate how this tool works. But what we might do is to create a new feed so we can see how that works. So if I click on create new feed here on the left and say test feed for PD, think of this as the folder that all of your content is going to feed into. At the moment, it's sitting down here at the bottom. There's nothing within there, but I can add content into my feed. Now, what you see that I've done further up is that I've actually created 3 other types of feeds where I've got specific types of content going in. So within this education feeds feed, I've actually subscribed to 3 different services, publications, the EduGeek Journal, Faculty Focus that some of you might be familiar with, and the Teaching Professor. They're three blogging websites where they add articles. Think Campus Morning Mail, services like that. You can subscribe to any of these into your Feedly single feed, and everything that comes in there will just obviously appear most recent to least recent underneath, and you can then customize how you view the content within your feeds. So those are text articles that are coming in from those different services. You can see underneath the title from where each one's come from. That one's from the Teaching Professor 14 hours ago, Faculty Focus, EduGeek Journal. And then you can open up each of these, and then you get to read, obviously, the full article. Within each of these, you can then highlight and mark up content within those, or then you can share those on to other people from there. But really the main kind of application for this tool is about gathering all of these various services that you might be looking at discretely and put them into one stream, and then potentially either just reading them for yourself or sharing them on. And what you'll find, if I wanted to add another feed, I've got a plus sign over here on the left-hand side, follow new sources. If I was, for example, going to look at Campus Morning Mail, I could just type that in the search. There it is underneath. And at that point, I get the option to follow it. It'll also bring up suggestions for ones that are similar, such as the conversation. If I chose to follow that, I then choose which feed I want it to sit under. Right, so if that was education feeds, I can add that, and that will now sit inside my education feeds. So I could be looking at this on my phone, for example, and be scrolling through all of the education feed articles in the one place without having to go hunting for them or to keep typing in those individual addresses. The thing that interested me about this potentially for our students is you're also able to add feeds from our lectures in CSU Replay. So within our subject sites, if we've got subject sites that use Panopto, if you're making your lectures in there, your students will be able to subscribe to your lectures so that they come through a tool like Feedly. So this is a suggestion that we could put to them. So I can see there's some here. If we look at what have I got there, Com114. If I find that quickly. Okay, let's assume it's that one. And I'll just find the CSU Replay folder. So in the past, students would have had to have found the folder for replay. If we ever get to the bottom of this scrolling shenanigans, assuming that the CSU Replay folder was public, the students would go in there, and then we'll just wait for this to load. No videos. Which one was it, I wonder? Com114 2021 30B. I'm in the wrong one. Bathurst distance, that's fine. Let's try that again. Anyone else having a fun time with the new scrolling mechanism in place with the nav bar in CSU Replay? In I2, I should say. I am not.
I think DIT is roll back the feature now.
I hope so. I'd like them to roll it a whole lot further back. All right, so inside this subject's Panopto folder, we've got all the videos that the students would see week in, week out, and they would have to come in here and watch them unless the academic, for example, broadcasted in some way, maybe in an announcement, maybe they embedded it within their learning materials, but essentially that's the only way they're going to get hold of that content. If the students had been advised to subscribe to Feedly, for example, or to subscribe to the lecture feed using a feed reader, at that point, they are able to actually, through their mobile device or through a computer, actually see the entire collection within Feedly, and at that point, play back each of those lectures.
Hello, Michelle O'Connor here.
Okay, so I won't
this
put
week's
Michelle on the spotlight
catch-up
too much,
on
but basically each of her lectures is available, the entire series, through this tool, through a feed reader. Okay, what the students need to do to get hold of this, and what we might do is put together a short clip on how to do this for students, but we want the RSS feed to your lectures. And the way we get that is inside the CSU replay folder, you've got the RSS feed icon up in the top corner. If we click on that, you'll see that there are 4 options. Subscribe in iTunes. So this is video, subscribe in iTunes, video, subscribe to the RSS, or if you just want audio. But what I'm going to say is this one here, subscribe to RSS, is the thing that I want. If I right click on that and copy the link, it's going to look like that. That's what the link looks like. It goes to Panopto. It points to your particular course, for example, and to videos. That's just for your reference for what that looks like. Inside Feedly, if I wanted to add a new feed, remember over on the left, we've got this plus sign, follow a new source, Control V to paste in that address. And underneath, you'll see straight away, there's the course and the name of the subject, for example. And at that point, we're subscribing to all of the lectures that get added in there one after the other. So that's how they can subscribe and get it through to their mobile devices quickly and easily. There are many feed reading tools, feed aggregation tools, but this one I've found, I think seems to be more robust in terms of the different types of content, whether it's articles that they subscribe to, whether it's audio sources that we provide them with, or podcasts, for example. If they were going to find podcasts that they wanted to, it allows you to combine the personal and the, let's say, the subject-based stuff very quickly and easily. And underneath, I've got another collection here of feeds. This time they're podcasts, and I've subscribed to 3 different ones there. We've got Batuta Advocate, Bunta Vista, for example. And they can just be added again by hitting the plus and putting in the RSS feed. So I don't know if many of you are using feed reading tools to collect content from around the web, but I have found that this one, in terms of the mobile app that comes with it, and I guess how comprehensive it is in allowing you to subscribe to lots of different types of content and pull them all into one interface is quite handy. Prue, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Feedly is a really great tool, and I think, I mean, I've used Feedly in my own teaching, but the way I used it was to try and aggregate a whole lot of information for my students about what was happening in the world, in this case of environmental sciences. So pulling in RSS feeds from the Conversation website, from the latest policy updates from the Department of Environment, Water and something else they might be called at the moment. So you can sort of, find the RSS feeds from elsewhere and pull it into this really nice curated world of information about perhaps the future discipline that students are going into, or something like that. But what Lachlan was just showing about the ability to also pull in, lecture recordings or podcasts is something I hadn't been really thinking about. So there's something else I've learned today that might be going into my next lot of Feedly or Feedwind or whatever else that's out there as an aggregator.
Yeah, and look, Jen's asked an interesting question there. We'll look at boards now, but essentially the idea of a board is that you can take particular content that you've decided was important and add it to your special space as such. So apart from, think of it as favorites, all right? So within each of the sources that you've added to whichever given feed, you can click on this Save to Board option and choose which board you want to save it to. So in this case, I've got a board that I created down the bottom here, test board, or I can create others. I'm going to add it to the test board. And then if I open up the board, it's just another feed really, but it just collects them all in the one spot, the ones that you've marked as your favorites. But you can't make the board public under the free account. This is one of the limitations that we get with this tool. Right, so you'll see there's an icon there that's next to it. We can either add articles directly, but next to it, there's make it public. And this is probably where it's going to prove me wrong. Okay, public board down the bottom here. Do you want to make it public? As soon as I click, I'll just move the Zoom nav out of the way. Thank you, Zoom. As soon as I make the board public, click on it, I get prompted about pricing. Okay, so you can't actually make the board public. It's only for your own use, your own collection under the free account. All right, so that's an immediate kind of limitation. Whilst I can, it does have a feature that allows you to create newsletters and use Teams, but I haven't plumbed this too heavily, but my expectation is that this is a paid feature and it'll be taking articles that you've curated, etc., and then disseminate it. But I'll have to have a look into that aspect. What I will point out, whilst we're talking about limitations, is that under the free account, you can have 100 sources in your Feedly account, right? So whether it's 100 podcasts or 100 web pages that you've subscribed to, articles, blogs, subjects, for example, each individual subject that you subscribe to the lectures for would count as a source. You can have 100 of them under the free account. You can have a maximum of 3 feeds. So I had lectures, education, and podcasts, for example. Those were my 3 folders or collections for my sources. You can only have 3 of those under the free version. And adding the ability to be able to share your collections with others, to be able to mark up what's coming through, none of that is possible under the free version. So it allows you to subscribe to these yourself. It becomes very much a personal tool under the free version. And then if you want to access more of that sort of collaborative sharing this out further beyond sharing individual articles or sources, you can do that under the free version, but you can't share collections. Yeah. So look, very briefly, what we might do, I don't know, I've done a lot of talking here, but from your point of view, I'll just drop a link into the chat. With a tool like this, can you see any facility for putting this sort of tool in the hands of students or using yourself? If so, drop it into the Menti that I've just put into the chat pod, which is just asking, do you have any web-based content? That's what this is pulling in, web-based content that's relevant for you, for your discipline. And if so, just drop it in there and we'll have a look quickly at whether or not we get some sort of application that people can see this tool being used for in their discipline. Enviroscience, Prue, you were saying that you would use it yourself for collecting information about that discipline and providing it to students?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking about something really quite dry when it comes to policy and legislation in the environmental sciences, it was a nice way to link them to show them the live nature of policy updates. So the government has a nice RSS feed where it will show you updates on all sorts of bills and draft policies and things like that. So you can show them that this is actually quite exciting, or I think it is. It's not as dry as it might sound on paper, but you can show them that sort of live nature of how things actually work within their discipline area. And most often, you know, students would actually find that it is rather interesting. Yeah, it was a nice link back out to what's actually happening in practice compared to what the theory might be saying in the classroom.
Yeah, look, I found talking to some academics around campus here as well about not just Feedly, but in general using subscription tools, that a lot of the time the students are asking them for advice on, I guess, various sources that are up to date that they can subscribe to get more knowledge about what's happening in industry. And how we provide that information to them obviously is on lots of different channels. But a tool like this, I guess, represents an interesting starting point for starting to pull those in. But certainly, it's hard to find people that aren't aware of tools like Spotify or other podcast subscription tools. Everyone seems to be across those at least, or have heard of them, and wanting other ways to access, their materials. So we've got some ideas coming in here about different types of applications for the tool, collecting articles from different areas. At the moment, we're using sort of I suppose, more of a manual process, putting them all into Word and then providing that to the students. We also have lots of tools in this space as well that we probably, I'm thinking of things like Padlet, for example, as our own collection spaces. And those maybe only work within the subject site itself. And once we move on to the next session, they're either lost or need to be reprovisioned. Whereas this tool, I guess, continues outside of the use of the subject site. And we've got one here using it for collecting marketing news, etc. And yeah, getting other people to add to it. So that's an interesting point. If I had to figure out a workaround for making this tool collaborative, hopefully Google's not watching too closely, it would be to create a generic account. So if you created a generic Google account for the students to use for your class and provide the sign in to them, then they could all sign into Feedly and all contribute to it, rather than them having lots of individual accounts. So be using a generic login. But I won't talk about that in too much depth today. All right, anything else on Feedly before we move on, Prue?
No, I don't think so, but there was a really great comment there in Menti. So thank you to whoever put it there, just around having some ideas around different discipline-based RSS feeds. So I think that's a good question of, well, where do you start when you get your RSS feeds? And for me, it was just a lot of Googling of RSS, environmental science, and so on. But it's a really good point around, can we come up with some nice sort of curation of things? And that might be something to talk to colleagues about within your own discipline of getting together some ideas, pooling those ideas of where you could be gaining that sort of content and where you might be looking, because it is really quite a broad area now of where you can get those feeds from.
Is that something that schools do, for example, that provide a collection of resources that they recommend students start accessing as part of their studies? That would make sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if we've ever gone into that realm, though, of that digital content curation. We often have, as Nicole's put into the chat, we have those library guides and recommended readings, but do we have those recommended RSS feeds or podcasts or things now? So that's a really nice idea.
I think Leganto has a subscription feature built into it as well. But whether or not it's being used, I suppose, in a more holistic sense or just at the subject level, I think at the moment it's purely subject level and provisioned in that sense. Could be wrong. All right, let's move on. Next tool we're going to have a look at is Wakelet. And I think the best way that I can describe Wakelet is it's a tool for collecting stuff. Making collections. So again, we've got lots of different types of content around on the web. How can we organize it in an engaging way? And this one particularly has more potential as a collaborative tool. We'll wait for the computer to wake up. Okay, so the language that we're using in here is collections. And this one I find is probably going to be more comfortable for a lot of people to use. The interface is very, very easy to use. It's completely free, and it basically allows you to create streams of content within a collection. So I'll open up one, for example, before we have a look at the interface for the tool. This is a Wakelet collection. You'll notice that all of the content, for example, is streamed one after the other. And that is, of course, so that it can be viewed on a mobile device easily. All this stuff is designed for mobile first, essentially. And we've got a collection here that's been created under this theme, for example, about Harry Potter Lego and how it's, the bane of some people's existence. Underneath it, different types of content have been added to the collection for people to view. I can share this. I think it probably has been shared, but I'll just share this collection. Give us the URL, please. If I was to drop that into the chat pod, in theory, you should be able to view that. And what types of items have been added to this? A PDF. Okay, that'll open up instructions for some sort. So PDF files have been added to the stream. Must be a huge file. Or there's a mouse powering my computer, one or the other. Okay, so it's about Hogwarts Castle. Okay, YouTube clips embedded, for example. Okay, well, I've got the sound off there, but we've got video that's put in. Let's go back. What else has been put in there? I can comment and like each of the things that's been put in there. Websites. Okay, so that's text at that point. There's an article there about Lego addiction from Reddit, for example. So different types of web-based content have been added in to make a collection. That collection is then marked as something that I can invite people to by clicking on the invite tool, and anyone's able to contribute to it. Once you provide the link to it, you get a link that you can provide them, or you can do it via a QR code, for example, that you could put around if you wanted a physical object for people to scan. And there's an option there under contributors. At the moment, it shows that it's just me, but you can also invite individuals via email if you didn't want to provide just the link to the object. So the tool itself is pretty simple and straightforward. And if I was going to create a new collection from scratch, it asks for things like cover images and titles, and then you just start adding sources. So if it's got a web address, you can add it to your collection, or other people can add it to the collection. Is what true? Oh, about Lego. Not so much Harry Potter, but I know someone that's in this situation. I don't have the money for Lego. Look where we work. Okay, I'm going to give us a bit of an activity, as I think it's going to be far more useful for you to play around making collections than me talking about making collections. So let me grab the link. And what I want you to do is to jump into this collection, which is Glam Rock Gods of the 80s. And the idea is we've got, I think, probably 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes for you to find anything you can on the internet. Doesn't matter whether it's an image, an article, a YouTube clip, anything at all, and add it to our collection. Absolutely, Peter, you can add yourself. And let's see what happens to this collection when a bunch of people have got access to the same spot and can add items to it. So I'll just refresh it. I'll add some more myself. But we'll see how easy it is. All I've done, of course, to get that out to the rest of you is gone to invite and got the link. But if you want to work on the collection, you'll see that I'm going to have to click on the edit button and add resources. So maybe the title image is enough to spur you on. I know, for example, that Twisted Sister recently won a court case against a certain politician. Maybe if I was going to get that article in there. Okay, so that's ABC News. I'll grab that. I'm going to add that to the collection myself. Add content, add the web address. There it is. Nicole's added an item. Thank you, Nicole. And you hit done once we're added. So far we've got Okay, Adamance and music. We've got YouTube clips coming in. We've got newspaper articles. Okay, KISS, thank you. That had to be done. All right, so it is very, very quick and easy for people to start working inside a collection and adding content to it. As long as the content's on the internet, it can be added in here. I suppose that's also its limitation as such. It doesn't really work with local objects into your collection. If we try and edit and add items, the only option really that we have. Jim Morrison, good point. We either paste a web address, we can type in text, we can add images from our own local computers, for example, local devices, and you can upload PDF documents. That's about it. So there aren't an infinite number of other types of content you can add. You're either putting in a web address, pointing to something, or adding either an image or a PDF, or typing in a bit of text yourself. I will point out that we have the option to change the layout inside Wakelet. If we didn't just want one item on top of each other in what they call the media view, which gives you a bit of a blurb and a visual, we can change that to things like a grid view, which starts to put our content alongside each other. One next to the other, so we get kind of more of a slide-based look. We can change the layout to a compact view, which will just give us the titles, or well, compresses it really. It says what type of resource it is and when a line or two of text with a thumbnail. I haven't played around with the mood board. I have no idea what that is, but they promise that it's engaging. Let's have a look. I don't know. How is that a mood board, Prue? How does this make you feel?
It looks incredibly ordered to me.
Yeah, okay. Right. So look, we've had a few minutes of people contributing to this. I can see up the top here because it's showing the different thumbnails of people that have jumped in and contributed. So thank you all for doing that. You can only change the layout in edit mode, by the way. You can't do it once it's viewing. So we've got all of that added. I don't like the mood board, Prue. Sorry, I'm changing it. Let's put it back on maybe the grid view. I think maybe had a bit more going for it. All right, so apart from editing the items, once we're coming in here without edit on, what can we do? Well, we can share this to other people. We can like collections, use various reactions. We can use a thumbs up against individual contributions. We can bookmark them, save those individual items. And at that point, I'd be thinking it would allow me to make my own sort of collection of favorites. So cherry pie, that's going in there. You can add items that you're bookmarking into your own collection. So if I had a separate collection for, you know, Lachlan's private stash or whatever, I could then take these bookmarks and add them to a collection, or just save it into a bookmarks collection, which would just be like your web browser bookmarks. A lot of these tools will also have a reading tool, which will actually, it's a beta tool in most of them, but it'll actually start trying to read the text if there's any text in the object. If it's a video, that's not really going to work. It'll try and read out the description that goes underneath it, but it's speech to text. That's what that icon's pointing towards. Right, so we had questions about embedding. Excellent.
Sorry, Lachlan. Yeah, it looks really good. I really like the functionality of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to say yes. If I go to share, I get several options, one of them being the link that I've given to you guys to share. I get a PDF if that was important. Maybe if you wanted someone to upload the collection that they'd made into i2, for example, as an assessment. So it wouldn't be interactive at that point, which is a problem. Or we get an embed code. So here's our code down the bottom here. Copy the embed code. There's a few tweaks that we can do. You can change the layout if you wanted to embed it. So if I wanted it in that sort of grid format, for example, you can turn off various options if you didn't want cover images or titles, etc. But the code was the important part. So let's jump into an I2 site and see how that looks. We'll put this somewhere where the academic will never see it. And then I'll delete it. Okay, down the bottom here. New content item. So this was a Wakelet embed. Just go over to your code view with your 2 arrows. Paste the code, Control V, and save. It's looking good. Let's hit submit. And there is our Wakelet board. We're just waiting for it to load with all the different objects that were underneath. And then they're each underneath and can be played back. All right, so the websites can be visited and opened up. It doesn't look like you can embed it and edit it, work on it at the same time. So it becomes viewable, obviously, when it's embedded like this, but you can't work on the collection in here. So if this was going to be provided, Nicole, I guess we'd be providing 2 links, the link to actually open it up and work on it, and then the output as such, what the Wakelet actually looks like embedded.
Okay, yep. Yeah, so you can't actually work. I was just thinking of embedding it in a site and getting students to work in it in the site. And then, yeah, but it looks like it's, like you said, it's just the final collection that's shown.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, look, you could play around with the iframe pointing towards the link to the actual board, but the embed code itself looks like it's only pointing to the finished product. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So what do we think of that, peoples? Any application for Wakelet as a tool that you may or may not like to use? Prue, first thoughts?
Yeah, I think Wakelet actually looks quite fun. And as you were just doing that then, while we're sitting in the meeting, again, for our online meetings with online students, I think that seems like something really fun, but you can still take away as something that you can embed later on into the subject site to show what our learning was around a particular point or whatever we were doing. The other thing I was thinking, though, as we're talking about it is, I wonder if there's a role this can play for students to have their own sort of accounts and things, but just around organising an assessment or organising something like that. They can curate the resources as they're going. And some students might find that they really are comfortable in sort of creating and planning in this way. Others might still go back to, writing things in a notebook with a pen, but for others, this might be something they're far more comfortable with. So I think there's quite a few applications for this.
Yeah, I think, we sort of thinking about potentially collections without using the word collection. You could turn around and say you could create different spaces for different groups, for example, and then you provide the link to the different collections to the different group members, and then they can obviously use that as a creative space to assemble, curate various content. It sounds more like a journey rather than a finished product type artifact. Right, Nicole's got their curating material and sharing with the class. Okay, so the academic doing the curation and then sharing it. Yeah, Jen's put some in there as well. Yeah, assessment feedback.
The students go out and curate. So there's groups and they each get allocated. You look at the latest trends in technology and trends in consumer behavior or trends in this market, that market, and then they can create in groups, create the boards and then present it back to the class. So to make sure that way is a good way to keep the content really current, especially in those fast moving disciplines.
Sounds good. I think I'll just point out that when you see this prompt with these tools about browser extensions, this basically will add an icon up the top in Chrome that will allow you to bookmark whatever page you're on and add the link directly to a Wakelet collection. So rather than going to the website, grabbing the link, going back to your Wakelet board, going to the collection and pasting the link, it's a shortcut. I'm not entirely, I guess, endorsing the use of browser extensions, because my experience is that they actually eventually will start to slow your computer down when you've got a heap of them running, but they do make this process of bookmarking and adding it to a collection faster, rather than doing it, I guess, the manual way that we've been working through. All right, look, also I'll find within the tool that if you go into Explore, you can actually have a look at a whole bunch of other people's collections and how they've approached the use of the tool. If you're looking for a bit of inspiration, I definitely recommend having a look in there. They make, you know, the rest of us look like amateurs, of course, but that's part of the gig. It'll give you some ideas about how you might use this tool, or the types of resources that look particularly engaging and display particularly well inside this tool. So that's under the Explore function at the top. All right, so keeping an eye on the clock and moving right along. That's Wakelet in a nutshell for us to have a play around with. It is entirely free, as opposed to Feedly and Thinglink that we'll look at in a second. Wakelet's entirely free, which means you can use it yourself and share it out, or put it in the hands of students to use, for example. It's embeddable, and I would argue that it's probably the easiest of the three tools to get your teeth into from today. Yeah, Yumly is a great resource, Jen. Absolutely. I look in there when I want to torture myself with things that I can't cook, but yeah. Okay, last one, Thinglink for today. Thinglink. Has anyone heard of Thinglink at all? It's seems to be talked about on a lot of education podcasts recently, but this is one of the ones where I was saying it seems to be targeting a younger audience potentially, and maybe you'll see what I mean once we get into it. It's Finnish, which in education circles seems to be kind of a badge that says it must be amazing. In a nutshell, it's a tool for marking up or making images interactive. So at a very, very base level, you might say things like a hotspotting tool, if we were using H5P or others, where we take an image, our chosen image, and we make that image or parts of that image interactive. Thinglink, essentially, if we reverse the order of the words, it helps to, you know, to us to figure out what it does. It links to things. And I'm going to pull up the website, which is thinglink.com. Just close some of these other ones. Wakelet, Feedly, you can go. Thinglink.com. It has a free account version, and it basically will be asking you to create. If we click on create, I've just logged in again using a Google account. And it's asking you about interactive content that you want to create, but everything is starting really from an image. Your canvas, your wallpaper, your background, however you want to think of it. If you wanted to start with a blank one, then maybe we'll do that just as a demonstration of how this works. And then it wants you to upload an image. So you're going to need an image for this, for your canvas. You can search for them within tools like Unsplash, but really the easiest way is if you've already decided on what the image is going to be. All right, I'll go into there and find something. Sure, food, that'll do. Lemon curd tarts. All right, so I've uploaded an image. I want to work on that image. It's now opening up my canvas to do with lemon curd tarts. So this is my background. And at this point, I can click on the edit icon and start adding what they refer to as tags. You might be more comfortable with the term hotspot, for example, but when you add a tag, you get this plus sign that you can drag around to different spots. And then we decide how we want that to behave. Do we want to put in text and media? So when they're talking about media, do we want to add other images or videos that we have, local videos, and add them to the spot? Okay, so sure, there's an image. So I've got an image I want to add, text. I have no idea what Game of Thrones has to do with lemon curd tarts, but we'll just put that in there. If you have an address for the button, for a button image, not many people go that far, but if you've got an address for where a button image is held, you can do that. You can also attach local audio if you've got an MP3, for example, and you can change the look of the icon. Okay, I'll put that one there and hit done. At that point now on my canvas, you'll see that there is a Thinglink, a button that people then, once we share this, can click on, and it will have the image, the text, etc., available through there. So it's created effectively a hotspot to that particular part of the canvas. And I can add as many of those as I want. If I just wanted to put text or a text label, I could do that. So text. So I've got a text label, but it doesn't do anything until I hover over it. So if I was putting that there. Other types of tags, and this is probably the most commonly used application, is that we're going to link or really embed from another website. So if, for example, I had gone to YouTube previously and looked up cooking lemon curd tarts, got the address, and then gone back here, I can then take that YouTube address, which will now link to that Thinglink. Maybe I want to change the icon so that it looks more like food. I don't know if they have a food one. No, we'll use a love heart, fine. And hit done. I've now got this button, essentially, Thinglink, that I can put here. Right, so it's added those to my canvas. I can hit done when I'm finished. And here is my Thinglink with its various buttons, Thinglinks, links to further web content, all within that image. At this point, if I want to make that shareable, I can embed my interactive image, and that's probably going to have the most interest for you if you're wanting to make an interactive infographic, visual, whatever you want to call it, and embed that within your subject sites. You can definitely do that. Or you could just get the link. And if I hit copy and then provide that to you, my guess is when I give it to you here, that this is not going to be public yet. Tell me, I guess, when you click on it, whether it opens or not. Privacy settings is the second option. Next to edit up here, there's an I. If I click on that, first option there is about organizations. Well, I'm not doing any of that. Totally public, so people could search for this. Unlisted is generally the one that I default to most of the time, which means that it's public if someone's got the link. Once I hit save, now when you click on that link in the chat pod in our Zoom meeting room, you should be able to open up the Thinglink poster and click on each of those buttons, the Thinglinks, and you have an interactive graphic essentially. All right, so I have created one for us, a separate Thinglink. I'll provide the link to you to have a look at. And that will point you to this page, which is a map of the Sydney Zoo. And you'll see that around the map, there are a number of buttons, almost like a treasure hunt, really, that you can click on. And I've embedded lots of different types of objects. So for example, underneath elephants, there is a link to an article about feeding elephants, for example, dietary habits. Next to penguins, there is an embedded YouTube clip for Pingu, of course, because he's a penguin. Next to the sharks, there is an embedded SoundCloud clip, which is to a group called Shark Sounds. It's the best I could come up with, really. And so on and so forth. So look, really, this is about taking a graphic that's got value to you or to your students, for example, and zhuzhing it up, making it interactive, adding a bunch of buttons, thing links, etc. to it quickly and easily. All right, so yeah, Holly's made a comment in there. What do you think about that, Holly? Do you want to turn your mic on and talk us through some of those ideas? I'm keen to hear from other people. I've done enough talking, I'm sure.
I just thought it would be really helpful, like you could have a map, for example, and then look at different elements of like settler colonisation and put different kinds of resources about how events were represented using like different perspectives in the same button. And then conversely, you could also use it for cultural immersion by including a map of Indigenous country and then embed particular kind of sources into, I just really like the map idea of the what you've got set up here.
Absolutely. And I've got a question there that I'll answer from Jen about what can we do with these images apart from giving people the link to them. When we go to share them, we've got two options, obviously, the link that points to them or embedding them again. And I'll embed one of these now with the embed code. Unfortunately, the answer to your question is in PowerPoint, no, we can't. There are add-ons and additions to PowerPoint that allow you to embed websites and things, but almost no one uses them. So it's problematic. Certainly not underneath the version of PowerPoint that we have available at the uni. So if I go to subject side again, poor com114, I have to remember to clean this out after I'm done. And go down to where I added some stuff before. Hang on, test stuff. This time round, build content. I'm doing exactly the same thing once we've got the embed code. Build content item. This is Thinglink. I go over to my embed button, paste the code. There it is. It's dropped it in there. And we have our embedded interactive image. Scrolling. That we can then click on each of the objects. So all of the interactivity is maintained within the embed. Okay, so this really is all about how you basically will have images, graphics, etc., that you want to get more value out of, I guess, with your students, and other content that you can then link onto from that point. So I think it's arguably in our context got a lot of application for people because you're going to have visual engagement within your discipline in various forms, and this will then allow you to leverage that even further. So I think that's about all I'm going to say. I'll bring us back to the end here. It does have a 360-degree image library already in there. If you've worked with 360-degree images, I definitely recommend looking at that inside the tool because it looks amazing, and you basically can then move all the way around looking at different parts. And if you've got access to a camera that will allow you to make those photos yourself, and maybe Holly, certainly in terms of the cultural immersion stuff, I know Jade's got access to that. So this is all accessible through the free version. So I think, Prue, I'll hand back to you to wrap things up, but thank you everybody for listening to me rattle on for an hour again. And we certainly look forward to seeing you all for the next session of PD Blocks, which will happen at about week -3 for session 60. So yeah, we've got a bit of a break now as obviously everyone kicks into marking mode and all the rest of it.
Yeah, thank you, Lachlan. I think it's been great walking through some of these new tools, and it's a nice creative way to end some of our sessions as well, as really looking at how we can, I suppose, reach through our screens and sort of go that little bit further with our students and showing them those connections, that interconnectivity between what we're teaching in the classroom and outside. So lots of teaching ideas there, just, around embedding those sort of interactive infographics that we've seen there. I've used Thinglink myself quite successfully to talk about careers with students, having some really great sort of images that allow students to hotspot on different things and learn about different careers or getting prepared for work integrated learning. There's lots of different ways we can use these. I'd be really just sort of having a go, signing up for the free version and having a play around with what you can do with those, popping them into your Interact2 site and seeing how they look, what their sort of interactivity sort of is. But I think there's lots of ideas there that we can work with. So I'd probably echo Lachlan's big thank you there. I know we're running over time, but it's been really great having you all along for our sort of session 1 of PD, and we're looking forward, I guess, to seeing you all again come a few weeks before session 2. We'll certainly be here, looking forward to seeing you all here as well. So thanks everyone. Thanks Lachlan.